Ladies and gentlemen, and here we are talking about the Holy Paladin today. Woohoo! Now, there's been a lot of controversy. Some people really hate the Holy Paladin changes. Some really love it. But that's basically the same thing for every class right now. Some people just don't like change, and that's all there is to it. And that's where a lot of the hate's coming from. But what has changed with the Holy Paladin in the 7.0.3 pre-Legion patch? Well, quite a bit. One of the things is no more holy powder to worry about, so you don't have to worry about that time spent. You're going to be like other healers, and you can just rely on the mana instead of, oh shit, do I have holy power? Good change, bad change, it's more reliant. That's one thing I can definitely say. It does take a lot of the decision making out, but in the same token, it plays fairly decently into it. Another thing that you really got to look into is you no longer have Holy Radiance. Instead, it's back to Light of Dawn and Light of Dawn alone for your AoE healing. Does that really affect you too much? Not really. Light of Dawn's low cooldown and low mana cost really make it a very solid choice, so we'll definitely go into that more in the actual gameplay. And the Mastery no longer shields you, so what are we looking at this? Instead, it's actually going to increase your healing closer to you. So the closer the target is to you, it's going to end up healing you for more, and it's not a bad choice, especially if you end up going with Aura of Mercy. That thing is insane if you are close to your group, and it does a very solid amount of healing. And we'll go over a few little niche situations with the Mastery through the talents here in just a few moments. And the last thing that I really need to end up covering, this quite a bit because there's been so much controversy, and that's going to be the new ability, Light of the Martyr. People say this ability is shit, but I tell you what, this makes Holy Paladins probably one of the most clutch healers available for a reactive situation. They've gone back from being the proactive, let's get, kind of like the Disciplined Priest was, let's pre-shield and just constantly spam on the tank or whatever to increase our numbers. Now you actually have to be reactive to what's getting done, what kind of damage is going out, who are you going to end up throwing that heal on, does the tank need a direct heal, or is your Beacon of Light going to work just fine? So much to really end up playing into this. Really, my thought on Light of the Martyr, it's just a filler spell, but it's definitely pop that clutch and get people back up as quick as possible, and you're going to be able to not only save your rate in a lot of situations with this, but you're also going to, maybe if you end up playing it right, if you're using your Holy Shocks for yourself, and you're actually going into more of a, okay, I know I can end up healing myself, I'm going to use Bestow Faith, which we'll go over that in the talents, very solid talent. Toss Bestow Faith on myself, and then I'm going to Light of the Martyr just about everybody I can, and poop, all of a sudden, everybody's up, and Bestow Faith goes off, and you're back up to top anyways. Really, there's some solid gameplay choices out of this ability, and I love it. A lot of people hate it. They say, just leave it alone, it's not worth. Nah, fuck that. Learn to use it. It's going to be a saving grace, especially in Legion content. But currently in the 7.0.3, let's start talking about the talents a bit. So here we are, we're taking a look at the talents. Real quickly, we're going to go over them. We've got Bestow Faith, Light's Hammer, and Crusader's Might in the 15 tier. Bestow Faith, currently the top choice in a actual raiding dungeon situation. And what it's going to do is it's after 5 seconds, this thing's going to do an amazing little pop-up heal for just about anything at a very low mana cost. Now, this is a time-released heal, so basically you'll throw it on and you gotta time it out a bit, and after 5 seconds, just boop, you'll see them jump up in the heal meter, and it's great. So, you've got that one, top choice. The next one's gonna be Light's Hammer. It works the same as it did before, to where you're gonna throw your hammer down, it's gonna heal everyone in that little radius, and it's a very solid amount of healing. Now, the thing is, it works up to 6 allies, and it's going to do a decent amount of healing, but it's very controversial. It's a very high amount of mana, and it also has a 60-second cooldown. So it's going to be a situational use. Maybe fights like Gorefiend, where everyone is stacked up, this may end up being better. But currently, Light of Dawn does a very solid amount of additional AoE healing, and it'll more than likely end up being much more efficient than what Light's Hammer will. But in heavy burst areas where you know you're going to take a lot of damage, it can be used situationally, but again, Bestow Faith currently takes over, especially in spread situations. And then you've got Crusader's Might. Crusader's Strike reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock and Light of Dawn by 1.5 seconds. This is going to be awesome for doing your questing stuff or maybe even PvP, but if you need the additional damage is what this talent's going to be based around. Level 30, you have Cavalier, Unbreakable Spirit, and Rule of Law. Starting off with Cavalier, Divine Steed now has 2 charges. Unbreakable Spirit reduces the cooldown of your Divine Shield, Divine Protection, and Lay on Hands by 30%, and then Rule of Law, it's a instant use with 2 charges and a 30 seconds on each recharge, but increases the range of your heals and the reach of your Mastery Lightbringer by 50% for 10 seconds. This is a very situational piece. Also, if you need a little bit more increased healing on a cooldown, it'll end up helping out just a bit, but very situational. So all 3 of these are actually going to be situational on what you need. If you need the lowered cooldowns, Unbreakable Spirit's going to be awesome. And then you've got Cavalier, which is just my general choice. Having that additional steed, just the extra movement helps out quite a bit, especially on a class that's very limited on its mobility. Even with Light of the Martyr, it does end up taking some work, especially if you're already taking some damage. You don't want to really Light of the Martyr too often unless it's super clutch. Level 45, you have Fist of Justice, Repentance, and Binding Light. These are going to be your CC groups, and really Fist of Justice, Repentance, Binding Light, all of them are going to be the same. Repentance is a generalized CC, Binding Light's just going to stun everything in its general area for a second, disorient them, whatever. And then Fist of Justice just works with your Hammer of Justice cooldown. So it's not a whole hell of a lot to really end up playing with, just which CC group you like the most. Not very situational in raids at all. Level 60, Devotion Aura, Aura of Sacrifice, and Aura of Mercy. Aura of Mercy is the top one because of the insane amount of heals you can get off of it, especially the way that your Aura Mastery works, and we'll go over that a little bit later. But what you're looking at is Devotion Aura, allies within 10 yards take 20% reduced damage, split over the number of allies in the aura. While Aura Mastery is active, all affected allies gain the full damage reduction. So basically what this is saying is, if you've got 5 people in the aura, it's only going to be 4% damage reduction. If you have 20 people that are in there, it's only 1% damage reduction. Really not great for progressive rating. 1% overall damage in a mythic, not that great. Aura of Sacrifice, now this is kind of situational, but at the same time, you don't want to put yourself in a bind to where you're going to take additional damage and actually kill yourself. But what you're looking at is while you're above 75% health, 10% of all damage taken by allies within 10 yards is redirected to you. While Aura Mastery is active, 10% of all effective healing you deal is replicated to all allies in the aura. So when you end up using Aura Mastery, which mind you, Aura Mastery ends up making it to where your aura goes out to 40 yards also. Just a little benefit on there, and again, we'll go over that more here in a bit. This is going to make it to where you are basically like a martyr beacon, to where all the damage is coming to you as long as you're above 75%. Where this gets interesting is if you don't need a beacon the tank, you end up beaconing yourself, you can end up actually using this to help maintain yourself up above that 75% and actually do a decent amount of reduction all the way through and through. So here we have Aura of Mercy, and it's going to end up doing a very solid amount of additional healing, especially under when you use Aura Mastery with Aura of Mercy. It does a very minimal amount of healing at the beginning, but it also is modified by your mastery. So the more mastery you have, the more healing this is going to end up doing as long as they're close to you. But what it does is heal 3 injured allies within 10 yards every 1 second. Right now, doesn't seem like a whole hell of a lot, but it adds up. It adds up quickly. While Aura Mastery is active, it'll heal all allies in the aura instead of 3, and healing is increased by 100%. So now you're doubling this healing on top of your mastery, and then you've also got everybody in the group that's getting this tick every second for, I believe Aura Mastery is lasting for 10 seconds, 8 seconds, but it's an insane amount of healing. Very weak compared to some of the other classes and their big AoE heals, but it's very nice as a buffer, and we'll go over a little bit more on the gameplay of how this is really setting up. Next up, you've got Divine Purpose, Holy Avenger, and Holy Prism in the 75 tier. Divine Purpose in an actual rating condition is very bad. RNG has never been great in a healer perspective, so the more that you can cut out on that, the better. Where the RNG does end up helping out, though, is the fact that it's going to actually help you on mana a bit. So It's situational, but I would not recommend it just because of the RNG flavor. Then you have Holy Avenger. It's instant, 1.5 minute cooldown, increases your haste by 30% and your Holy Shock healing by 30% for 20 seconds. This is just going to allow you to Holy Shock a hell of a lot more, and whenever you Holy Shock and you end up getting your procs, it's going to increase your overall healing just in general on a 1.5 minute cooldown. So if you need a little bit more on-demand healing and kind of like a little mini lust to go along with you, Holy Avenger is going to be pretty solid in that situation. And then finally we've got Holy Prism. It's going to work basically the same as what it did before, 20-second cooldown. And if you end up targeting the boss, it's going to heal 5 additional targets for X amount and do a little bit of damage to the boss, or vice versa. If you target the tank, it's going to hit the tank and damage 5 additional targets for X amount. It's got a wax and wane, a good gameplay, and it's also on a 20-second cooldown, so you can get some great benefit and healing out of this. And again, it works off of your mastery, so if you end up hitting the boss, and let's say you're taking Beacon of the Lightbringer, which is another talent, it's going to be affected greatly by your mastery, also if you're standing in close. Level 90, Fervent Martyr. Casting Holy Light or Flashlight on your Beacon of Light reduces the cost of your next Light of the Martyr by 50%, and it stacks. So every 2 casts of Flashlight or Holy Light, you'll end up getting a free Light of the Martyr. Unfortunately, you still lose the health. So the mana cost on this thing is not high to begin with. There's no real point of taking this talent unless it were to reduce the health that was involved also. If it reduced the health also, this would make this a very interesting gameplay. But currently all it does is mana, and, well, the mana is just not worth it. Sanctified Wrath. Now this is going to be situational. You got Sanctified Wrath, which Avenging Wrath lasts 50% longer and also reduces Holy Shock's cooldown by 50% for its duration. Now the thing about the duration on this, you're going to be seeing a lot of additional Holy Shocks, and you're going to see a lot of just better increased healing. Does it beat out Judgment of Light? No, it doesn't. And let's go over Judgment of Light. Judgment now applies Judgment of the Light to the target, causing the next 40 successful attacks against the target to heal the attacker for very little amount. This effect can only occur once per 1 second on each target. This is overall going to be the highest amount of healing done, just because it's going to be every single DPS. It's almost like giving them a leech off of what your spell power is in damage and healing back. Very nice to end up seeing this ability. The only time that you'll end up taking Sanctified Wrath over Judgment of Light is if someone else is applying Judgment of Light, because they do not stack. So if you've got a Holy Paladin in group along with you, or if you've got a prot Paladin that's throwing this up, you won't want to end up taking Judgment of Light. You'll want to go Sanctified Wrath, as where you will just overlap each other and it won't be that great. Level 100, Beacon of Faith. Mark a second target as Beacon, mimicking the effects of Beacon of Light. Your heals will now heal both of your Beacon, and blah blah blah. Anyways, this is exactly the same as what we've seen before. You can just throw an additional Beacon on, and it plays out exactly the same as what your original Beacon of Light did. Currently, there's not a lot of fights where this is very useful. Both tanks usually don't need healing. Couple of fights to where they might, like Zul, to where you're tanking 2 different adds at one point in time, but currently there's not a whole hell of a lot of fights for this. You can use it situationally, but most of the time if you're playing right and you're swapping your Beacon of Light from target to target already of whoever's tanking, you should end up getting a better benefit that way than if you've just throw 2 on or 1 on each target and call it good. Beacon of the Lightbringer, very solid indeed, and what this is going to do is allow you to actually stay out in the range, because you still get targeted by range mechanics. So it is a real bad thing, like on Iskar, if you're standing in the melee and you get targeted by the Fell Beam or the Fire Beam, you're going to drag it through the whole entire melee group. So what this is going to do is actually make your target that's got Beacon of Light on it, it's going to end up having the benefit of your mastery also, or you, whichever's closest, it's going to benefit with the highest percentage, which is very awesome to end up seeing, and makes it a very high raid priority. Now, Beacon of Virtue, this is going to be best situational in 5-man dungeons, especially with the Mythic Plus coming up. This is going to be awesome, and what it's going to do is apply a Beacon of Light to your target and 3 injured allies within 30 yards for 8 seconds. Your heals will heal all of them for 40% of the amount healed, and this is on a 15-second cooldown. Basically, you can end up dominating the heals hardcore in a shorter group, You'll throw this up, it'll end up marking the target and 3 injured allies around that target, and every heal that you end up doing at that point is going to mimic 40% of that heal to those people that have it. Very nice, very situational, and can be used quite often to end up bursting people back up. So just remember that, especially when you start getting into the Mythic Plus dungeons. Alright, so we're going to talk a bit about the stats and what's good. Obviously, intellect always on the top. The next one's going to be critical strike for a couple different reasons. One, it's going to have the most throughput of your heals, and actually, because of the reduced cost of your heals, or your single target heals, even your AoE heal, you're going to see a lot of additional healing coming from your critical strikes. One of the main factors on this, though, is the fact that way crit works with Holy Shock. Holy Shock, if you end up critting, you end up getting a buff by the name of Infusion of Light. Now, what this buff is going to end up doing is making it to where your Holy Light is going to cast at the same speed as what your Flash of Light does, and your Flash of Light is going to have an increased critical strike chance. So if you need a real big burst heal at that point, you can use it, or if you just need to end up getting a quick mild heal off, you can use Holy Light instead of Flash of Light. Gives some gameplay choices in there, but critical strike is going to be very, very important, especially with the way that your Aura of Mercy is working. Aura of Mercy has a chance to crit on each one of its ticks every second as long as you're in a group, so make sure you are always stacked up with at least 3 other people. Next up on the list is going to be Mastery. Your Mastery is just going to be an overall heal increase, whether it's from you or your beacon target, depending on how you talent. If you don't have the talent that's allowing you to beacon your target and it being the jump starting your Mastery also, then you need to make sure that you are close to the group, trying to do as much as possible and getting as much healing in as possible, because your Mastery is just a solid amount of additional healing. Keep in mind also, the closer that you are to people and the more Mastery that's running off of you, the more healing you're going to get every second from Aura of Mercy also. Always, 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 the main thing about Holy Paladins, make sure you stay grouped, and Mastery is one of the main reasons. Then you have Versatility, and Haste being the last. Now, Versatility overall is going to end up giving you an increased amount of healing, but the other thing too is if you have to end up using Light of the Martyr, Versatility is actually the damage reduction, and it will help out in this. You do end up still seeing the damage reductions going through. And then finally you have Haste, which is going to affect the cast times of certain abilities, and it's also going to affect certain cooldowns, which really, in my opinion, as long as you've got crit rolling on a piece of gear, you're good. Mastery should always become second, and then whatever Haste and Versatility float to in the ballpark after that, that's what you're really looking at. Make sure you're looking at your stats correctly. Crit, Mastery, obvious top choices, and then whatever the floating secondary is going to be, just let it be there. Don't prioritize it as much as crit and Mastery. Alright, let's get into the gameplay a bit. Now with the gameplay, what you're looking at is always make sure your Beacon of Light is up on the target that's taking the most damage. Whether this is the tank, yourself, whoever's taking the most damage, make sure that you have Beacon of Light up on them. That way the transfer is actually doing something useful. So if you have to, the main way to end up maximizing is make sure that you always, if there's tank swaps involved, make sure that you're always swapping your Beacon of Light onto the tank that is taking the damage at the time, and constantly rotate. That should be the first thing you do on every single tank swap to make sure you're getting the best out of your Beacon of Light, and you didn't go with Beacon of Faith. The next thing to end up thinking about is where to use your Holy Shock. Holy Shock is a very solid heal on a decent cooldown. You want to make sure that it's a benefited heal. It's got a higher chance of crit than any other heal that you have. And when you do crit, you're looking at the buff Infusion of Light to end up making your Holy Light reduced down to what your Flash of Light speed is, so you can get a very efficient fast cast off, or increase the healing of your next Flash of Light by 50%. Very solid amount of additional healing that you can get out of this ability, and you want to make sure you're maintaining it and using it correctly. The other thing is positioning. Positioning is a huge deal with the Holy Paladin now. You want to make sure you are very close to a group, but at the same time just behind them for the Light of Dawn healing. Light of Dawn on a very short cooldown and a very short mana cost is going to be a saving grace AoE style heal. Doesn't seem like it does a whole hell of a lot, but when you get those things starting to crit, all of that healing that comes from Light of Dawn is also transferred to your Beacon of Light target. So all that additional healing that you just did to the group that's standing in front of you, you're also doing to your beacon target, the tank, if he's taking additional damage. All of that's going in there. Same thing goes with your Aura of Mercy. Each one of those little ticks, even though it doesn't seem like a lot, feeds into a lot of additional healing to your beacon target. It's almost like having a constant roaring hot on them. And that's one of the main reasons why you want to always be with a group of people that are taking it. Now the next thing I want to talk about a little bit is the Light of the Martyr heal. Should this take place of your original heals? No, it should not. Where this should take place is if you're looking at losing the tank or another person, you're going to want to end up using this Light of the Martyr just to end up getting them topped up. But you're going to always want to keep a solid heal for yourself, like Holy Shock or Bestow Faith, to get you popped back up while you're having to use this ability. Bestow Faith is awesome for this, as you can end up tossing it on yourself and then getting a few Light of the Martyrs out in the process and never looking like you took damage at all. As your health goes down a little ways, Bestow Faith will go off and more than likely top you back up. Now the other thing you want to end up doing is watching your other cooldowns. If you took the Judgment of Light, you want to make sure that you're using Judgment on cooldown to keep the buff up. More than likely, by the time it is off cooldown, you're going to be sitting there using it yet again just to make sure it's up. Doesn't seem like a whole hell of a lot of healing, but when you got everybody that's taking damage and everybody's damaging and taking this little bit of additional healing, it is a constant buffer and almost like a leash situation for the raid to increase the overall healing. Very, very solid, so make sure you keep your Judgment buff up. Other than that, you're looking at your same situational heals. You're looking at Flash of Light. Are they going to need that fast heal, which is still lower mana cost than most other classes? And the other one is your Holy Light, which is still very awesome. And if you end up critting with either one, you're looking at some extra healing. Obviously, that's why crit's very high. I love me a healer with some crit. Now let's look at the cooldown usage just a little bit. You still have your Avenging Wrath, which is going to be an amazing cooldown for your heals. They've worked a few other things in here, so it not only increases your healing done by 35% for 20 seconds, but it also increases your critical strike chance by 20% for the same duration, and is a very, very solid for getting the whole entire group picked back up. Is it as good as Tranquility or Divine Hymn or Healing Tide Totem? No. Those are fire and forgets, really. You don't have to really do much with them, as to where you're still having to do a ton of thinking with Avenging Wrath to make it work. Yes, the heals are way higher, but they do end up doing a lot more healing. Now you also have Lay on Hands, still the exact same as what it was. Blessing the Sacrifice, still one of the better external tank cooldowns out there. Aura Mastery has had its huge change. It goes with each one of the ones that we talked about in the talents and has a different view on each one. But what it's going to do is actually increase your aura to 40 yards and improves its efficiency by whatever the mark was. If you took Aura of Mercy, as mentioned, you're actually doubling the healing that comes off of it. Mind you, it still has a chance to crit on top of that doubled healing, and it improves it to 40-yard range alongside. So you're looking at some insane amount of healing, and it also pulls the cap off. So instead of it being 3 people, it's the whole raid as long as they're within 40 yards of you. And then we still also have Blessing of Protection and Blessing of Freedom. Very solid cooldowns. If you've played a Holy Paladin before, this is the main part that you're looking at, is getting to use these things just right and maintaining. Mouse over macros are going to be awesome for this spec just because of how many cooldowns it has that are single target cooldowns and not fire and forgets. Overall, if you learn to play this thing situationally, it has a great amount of additionals that can go with it. You can play this thing 100% and not only do top heals because of how low your mana costs are. Really, the mana costs on this spec are the lowest of all of them. But not only can you top the heals with it, you can also do some top-notch damage, getting in there and actually beating shit up and doing a very solid amount of additional damage. And it's only going to get better when you get your two-hander artifact in Legion. With this, guys, I hope you enjoy yourself. I really hope you enjoy the Holy Paladin as much as I do. And thanks for watching.